I do not subscribe to that idea of weakness of Africans. I tell you, precious minerals are being harvested for the longest time, have been harvested for the longest time from Lake Nyos area. Nobody gives an account of it. They bribe the security in Yaoundé. If you stop an 18-foot container carrying, trailer, carrying those minerals out of womb, you can get a phone call transferring you to Betua, and you are replaced by phone call. So they are thriving on corruption. And since the struggle took a new amplitude, are those minerals still going out?
I guess not.
Herman Cohen, in his last tweet, did his worst. He saw that Ambazonia has a New Year gift from its efforts, which is getting back home and kissing the soil, that we did a good journey. And then he turns around like a coconut embassy of the Nigerian Biafra War to spew out words that will give the impression that La Republique has won. Just like a coconut embassy could make people believe that Biafra was winning when Biafra was not winning.
Thanks for joining me on Esteem Television. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Augustine Ambe. I want to start this show by wishing you Happy New Year. Happy New Year 2022. And in this Happy New Year, we're wishing away 2021, which was a good year for Ambazonia in so many ways. And I have a very interesting guest today to discuss about Happy New Year, what is happening now, and also what we should be doing or expect to do in 2022. This revolution we have right now really started in 2015 when the lawyers started writing their letters quietly. So it was already brewing. By 2016, it already started surfacing, and by 2017, it was all blown. In fact, September 22nd, 2017 was the day that hell broke loose because the whole territory came out.
Biya must let them go. Yes, he must. He is nobody, and he will never mean anything to the Ambazonians. This is the border between Cameroon, Southern Cameroon, and Republic of Nigeria. As I'm talking to you now, things are red hot. No, you can hear from yourself. Yeah, that's exactly what is happening here at the frontier.
But before then, they've killed some people, but September 22nd was good. October 1, that's when our independence was declared, restored. And since then, La Republique has brought everything they have into the territory, and we have resisted in the past 4 years. They thought it would take them 2 weeks, maybe a month, but it's been 4 years with their best in our territory, and nothing has happened. Biya declared war on Anglophones for demonstrating peacefully. 3 months turned to 5 years plus. All methods have failed, including starvation by village burnings. Southern Cameroon is not Yemen, Biafra, nor Timor-Leste. Just the last 2 weeks, people who started empty-handed were able to start taking La Republique trucks on the highway, and they didn't know who to catch, who to shoot, and then they took it on on civilians, babies, children, women in the neighborhoods, burning their houses. So these past 4 years have been wonderful years for Ambazonia. But let me tell you why we think it was a happy new year, it was a wonderful year. A gentleman who really should know better, Mr. Herman Cohen, he has paid very particular attention to our issues. This is how he wants to end the year, or this is what he wants to say about where Ambazonians are now. Now, he put it out in a tweet. In this tweet, he says, having effectively prevented the Anglophone separatists from achieving their political objectives, the Cameroon government should now initiate a process of reconciliation that would emphasize regional cultural autonomy. So basically, he's saying that La République du Cameroun and its French backers have won, and that this new year should be the year of La République coming to reconcile with us and put them back in their pocket. On this show, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor of inviting Barrister Harmony Bobga Mbuton, and he accepted. And Barrister, I want to welcome you on the show.
Thank you.
Somebody like Herman Cohen he's really expressing an opinion which is contrary to what many Ambazonians think. What do you think about Mr. Cohen's tweet?
You know, I was not embarrassed, because if you collect the tweets and utterances in other circumstances of Mr. Herman Cohen, you realize that he is the one single foreigner, and an American for that matter, who has been prostituting whoever is ready to pay him a fee to talk.
Arrest of weapons traffickers selling arms to West Cameroon separatists tells us that Cameroonian Anglophone rebels have access to unlimited support from neighboring Nigeria and therefore cannot be defeated by the Yaoundé regime. The situation is ripe for mediation. After 4 years of conflict, it is high time for Cameroon's political leadership, both Francophone and Anglophone, to recognize that there is no military solution. Instead, they should jointly work towards a return to the pre-1972 federal arrangement between the regions.
He opens his mouth and the words come out before he processes the ideas he wants to put out. So he has been flip-flopping between who he has to make a point on. Is it the Ambazonians or the La République of Cameroon establishment? I always make this distinction. Herman Cohen, in his last tweet, did his worst. He saw that Ambazonia has a New Year gift from its efforts, which is getting back home and kissing the soil, that we did a good journey. And then he turns around like a coconut embassy of the Nigerian Biafra war to spew out words that will give the impression that La République has won. Just like a coconut embassy could make people believe that Biafra was winning when Biafra was not winning. The worst a British diplomat who represented Britain at the United Nations. His name too was Cohen. When Honorable Jua sent a telegram to John Good Funcher, Dr. John Good Funcher, look, you must insist on a third option, that of accession to direct independence. Nothing like attaching to Nigeria or to the Republic of Cameroon. That Cohen of those years is the evil that put his feet on the ground, that it is not a matter that can be discussed. They have just two options. Nothing like accession to independence. And then the non-aligned countries, they insisted that half bread is better than none. Let's take that one. The rest of it, we'll discuss it in due course. But I want to tell you, Herman Cohen must be a very desperate soul. I don't think he is as comfortable as a cleaner of the train station. That is why he is prostituting to have relevance, in order that La République, that has perfected the art of bribery and in a blind manner, where people can even sell their grandparents' graves, he's probably been sucking money out of that place. And the sad thing is that the money is not even that of Cameroon, it is our money. It is our money. So, short and long of it is that I am advising Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians, to treat the tweet of Ambassador Cohen, who is the agent provocateur and the conseiller technique, the advisor at the base of the CDN. Because these youngsters who over-glorified their certificates and sat on the fences, waiting to be recruited as the new house slaves by the State Department under the handle of Ambassador Cohen, got advice from him. Oh, we have to do this, we have to do this. After the Southern Cameroonians treated the retreat turned public conference in Canada of CDN as a non-issue, Ambassador Cohen, in desperation to maintain his contract, has decided to make this statement in order to maintain his relevance to the CDN that is dead on arrival. Just the conflict that is leading to resignations of the founders because they fear exposure, they fear being unveiled in public. Cohen is bidding for his last salary. It shall not come from Ambazonia, because we do not only pray as Ambazonia, we pray and we work. Jesus, who brought salvation to us, still learned carpentry from his foster father and practiced carpentry with his brothers. Like the Americans say, there's no food for a lazy man. If Cohen had gone on retirement and he didn't save enough to feed himself, the old people's home is available for him. Thank you.
Wow. There's so much, Barrister, that you've packed that is hard to unpack, because you made a statement about CDN. You made a statement about the chairman of CDN who resigned. Obviously, you said Herman Cohen is prostituting. On whose behalf do you think he's speaking now? Prostituting is really a very serious word to use.
I don't need to remind you that I am an attorney in my own right in Nigeria and the goddamn Cameroon. But note one thing. I have a mind that can analyze. And how do you analyze? You marshal, you identify the issue, the resolution of such issues. You marshal the facts, apply the rules to those facts, and you draw the conclusion either by inference or deduction. I have been quiet, you know that, but I've been following Ambassador Cohen, and I can contrast him with the former Undersecretary for African Affairs, Thibonage.
Yes.
That's a gentleman I respect. It is known the world over that you don't bite the finger that feeds you. As an employee of the state, there is loyalty as an obligation, and you have to move within the canal of the departmental policy or the state policy. But when once you go on retirement, you are a free bird and you can fly like an eagle and not get your white feathers stained by the dunks of the pigs. So, what I'm saying here is that Ambassador Cohen, if you follow the trend of his tweets before the establishment of the CDN, I mean, some of those things are on record when they went to Massachusetts for a conference on Ambazonia. He created the situation where we must continue talking to ourselves instead of talking to the outsiders. And mind you, the complexity of the Ambazonian predicament and the ensuing conflict is such that people easily ignore the dangerous actors. It might not be the United States sponsoring Cohen. It could be the multinationals that have interest in southern Cameroon, because these are the unseen tectonic plates that are moving at frequencies that we cannot understand, which give determination to the actions of the Cameroon establishment and even dictate to foreign powers, because those foreign powers are at the mercy of these multinationals. If you don't support my economic agenda by adopting a political economic foreign policy with this Gulf region, next election I'll teach you a lesson. No money for you. I'll give it to the opponent. And the people bow. Britain, by its silence, its covert operations, is more an enemy to Ambazonia, as far by my assessment, than the rascal France. Because France is just struggling to survive. That's a very wretched country. All they know is manipulation in order to survive. Canada. When de Gaulle visited Canada as a nation and went to Quebec and declared, "Vive le Québec," that is proclaiming the sovereignty of a province over a nation. That tells you that anything that Canada put its hand to, despite the appearance of neutrality, is something to take with a pinch of salt. I give you a hard proof. When the humanitarian dialogue of the infamous Swiss connection were wooing the vice president of one of those vice presidents, the gentleman in Holland. What's his name again? The one who is holding brief for Seseko. What's his name again?
Oh, you mean Yerima? Yerima.
Yes, Yerima. That's the young man. Yerima, I saw that he was going to be swallowed because he was coming into the game of international politics for the first time. So I decided to counsel him. And I used the opportunity to corner the desk officer who was handling the file on this idea of mediation and conciliation between Cameroon and Ambazonian. I asked the man a series of questions. One of the questions was, who is financing this process? And he told me that France offered to finance the process, but they refused. But they are willing to accept the financing from Canada. I took it and I put it in my drinking cup. I said I would poach myself with it. France will just transfer the money to Quebec, and Quebec will say, this is it. And Canada will not argue, because the way Britain has agreed with France is that Canada and Quebec, we just have to keep them the way we want to keep Ambazonia and La République du Cameroun, because otherwise we will contradict ourselves, and we need those resources from the Gulf of Guinea. So, it's not that they care about the people. On the basis of international political economy and the understandings between Canada, Britain, United States, and France, and even the entire European Union, if any African lawyer worth his salt were to sit down and study the European Union Convention, which governs the relationship between the European country members, and the ACP Accord, which is the relationship between the African countries and the European Union, you realize that that ACP Accord, which was last renewed in Cotonou, is a widening of area of application of the Accord de Coopération, the infamous Accord de Coopération, that became a bargaining chip, take it or leave it, for the independence of French-speaking Africa. So we are dealing here with people who need heating, who need everything. Life is so hard. You and I are living in the United States here. Can you imagine if energy, there's a shortfall in energy? It will be chaos. And these people are living, what they are doing to us is an existential strategy. But we say they ought to be polite about it. Christianity has failed in Europe because they lied that, and even in America here, that Jesus was a Caucasian. Meanwhile, he's an African. So you have a situation where the lies are now coming out and looking at the liar straight in the face, and there can be no explanation. When you put all these things together, you see Herman Cohen as one of the people living in the tunnel who does not realize that by the oppression of the Africans and the exodus to Europe and sitting in class with them and beating them in class, and being responsible for running their health services, running their industries, and everything. In America here, how many Americans after high school want to study anymore? We are still being recruited like slaves, running the system as house slaves. But there are few good men who want to go home. And Ambazonians are going to lead Africa to go home. And we are good people. We are not going to allow them come and kill us and stay with us like the British did in Kenya. I'm reading a book now, The Hanged. The atrocities that the British caused on Kenyans. Boy, you think we have seen anything in Ambazonia? We're here to match it. So all these people who are connected to the House of Hanover in ancient Germany, they are the culmination of evil in the world. And God is on our side because we are using our brains, we are using our strength, not to revenge, but to protect ourselves and recognize humanity as one.
It's a lot that you've packed into this answer.
Yep.
I can already tell you right now that some of it is good for Ambazonia, some is not. I'll tell you which one is good for Ambazonia.
Okay.
The one that's good for Ambazonia is where you're trying to differentiate between Thibault Nash and Mr. Cohen, because Thibault Nash is speaking a different language from what Cohen is speaking. Because the baby Carol was killed in Boya like a month or two ago, not too far, towards the end of the year, and Thibault Nash came out and was seeing Ambazonia as a country that will establish itself. Look at what La Republica has been doing. And then Cohen just came a few months later or a month later and says, "Oh, Ambazonia is done." I mean, so yes, there is definitely. I know you call Cohen as prostituting around. So, and I know who you think is speaking the fact, and I agree with you that Cohen has not been very consistent. I am wearing this red jacket today because I was examining some of his tweets in this red jacket, and yes, he was up and down. He would when he speaks the truth, he does not conclude correctly. He speaks the truth and ends somewhere. And in fact, this is the first time that he actually came out fully against La République, and I see fully for La République and the French, and I can see that you drew a line where all this started. That before he joined CDN, he was flip flopping, but now you're saying that he has taken a position, and that. So those are the things that I think our people should understand. That don't follow the advice of Herman Cohen because he was programmed to say this, and in fact the timing is I'm sure the timing was very well calculated. So ignore that, because that is not addressing our issue. It's addressing something which, like Barrister Bobga is trying to emphasize. He is responding to a paymaster. He's not responding to any analysis. I think this pronouncement by Herman Cohen really makes the description of Barrister Bobga of CDN. It gives it credence. So, having said that, Barrister,
Let me add this. You know that Thibault Nash has worked in Cameroon before.
For 3 years. He worked in Cameroon for 3 years, yes.
So he knows the place. And this is why when he had to give a talk in Southern Texas University, I heard about it. And I know that it's difficult to meet these diplomats in Washington. So I flew to where he was going to give the talk. And the moment he finished his talk and they opened up for question, my question was the first. And I asked him, I said, I've heard you talk so much about energy security in the Gulf of Guinea. how do you intend to balance this American foreign policy in favor of energy security in the Gulf of Guinea and the right to self-determination of Ambazonia, which lies in the epicenter of the Gulf of Guinea? And, you know, he struggled between his loyalty to his job and his conscience. And then I walked to him when he finished answering my question, the last words that came out of his mouth were, I know I've not answered your question satisfactorily. And my response was, that is a discussion for another day. And I'm so glad that he is available for that discussion for another day. Having come to this country with his parents and sought asylum, he understands what is the predicament of people who are forced out of their nest. And I think if anybody with his head on his neck were to make a choice, I mean, it's an insult on Tibor Nash to compare him with Herman Cohen, because one is an outright Frenchified truant, just by the age, but the other one is a fine gentleman. And I'm saying this because since Tibor Nash left office, he has been very consistent in his utterances. And that has given us a unique opportunity of comparing the freshly harvested apple and the weevil-ridden orange that Herman Cohen is, as far as the interests of Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians is. Now with the CDN, they have to tell me, these are people who they are struggling. They may bluff. I know what credit card can do to people. But let me tell you, there is none of them who owns a fully paid house in this North America or Europe. I have my little chalet. I'm not owing any mortgage company. That's what makes a Graffiti man a man. The money and the encouragement with people like Herman Cohen from the State Department, that, can you imagine that America, that is always playing first, is deferring to Switzerland to handle our issue? And I had the opportunity of asking a director in the State Department that, what's going on with the United States? We want to choose our partners. We don't want our partners to be chosen for us. And we want to discuss with America, because the majority of viable forces from Ambazonia are in the United States. That's where the force of Ambazonia is. We need to talk, and talk like people who are talking with equals. We have gone to school, man. We're not monkeys jumping from one banana stem to another. We've gone to school. We can talk, make ourselves understood, and we can also understand others. And we don't want a situation where we will end up in a war, a stupid war, and start having evacuation, like in Afghanistan. We want to discuss. We don't yet have the capital now and the infrastructure to develop a couple of things. So if the United States or any other foreign power has it, let them not come like bullies. Let them come and discuss with us. We tax them for what they're getting from out of it. Jeffrey Sachs said it in G20 recently, that Congo has been raped repeatedly by Belgians, by Americans, and so on. They killed Lumumba. Why? Because they don't want to recognize the humanity in us and discuss with us as such. He even said, 7 out of how many Americans are hungry? Yeah, 7 out of 10 Americans are hungry. So why is Herman Cohen not going to Southeast to go and look at the problems there? Why is he not going to the Midwest to go and look at the problem of his brothers there? What is, if he's not on a payroll of another evil partner, what the heck is he doing with Ambazonia? He should just zip up. We got enough of him. And any Ambazonia who is fooling around with Herman Cohen should know that as far as Ambazonia is concerned, he's politically infected, diplomatically infected. And in the Truth and Reconciliation procedure that will ensue upon the restoration and re-establishment of Southern Cameroon as part of its centerpiece of post-conflict reconstruction, anybody who has traded with somebody who undermined the identity and integrity of Ambazonia is going to be given an opportunity to confess and repent. Otherwise, a tribunal will take care.
Well, thank you, Barrister. It looks like when Ambazonia speaks, there's a lot of determination, and I think you speak as some of the people who saw the things on the ground and said this is unacceptable. So I can understand the passion with which you come into some of these discussions. I told you when you gave my first answer that there were two things there. You obviously, because I always want to always bring it back, because all this information you're giving is so that Ambazonians can understand it and learn how to prosecute their war and understand all the different parts that are moving in our struggle. So the other part I was going to say is that, and I'm so glad you really came back and you really talked about Thibault Nash and Herman Cohen, because I know you talked about Thibault Nash responding to his conscience. I think he's really responding to what is right and wrong, because sometimes conscience could be a subjective thing. I think he is really responding to what is right and wrong, and he is compelled. I say compelled because he would rather just do the job and when he's done go home. But I think from what he knows and what he knows is right and wrong, he wants to speak up, and he's been speaking up unapologetically, and we thank him for that. Where Herman Cohen is wrong is that you can tell that he's not being honest, because you can see he can analyze certain things correctly. I don't have all of them here. This is not a discussion I really planned. I would have shown where Herman Cohen will make a statement that is correct, but then when he reaches the conclusion, he twists it, and you can tell that at this point he's playing politics. And yes, we don't want those type of politics, those type of people in our politics. If you're going to look at a situation and want to go and help, that's wonderful. But if you want to come and be one of the people who is part of the, see, in the U.S., we have two types of people.
He wants people to fight and die so that he can live off their carcass.
What I was going to say, yes, you're just supporting what I was going to say. What I was going to say that in the United States, you have winners and losers. There's no winner and then run. No, we have at the Super Bowl, when you win the Super Bowl, all the cameras move to you, the other people just disappear. Okay? So if you are going to remain, if Mr. Cohen wants to be part of our game, because our game is there's no middle ground. I think Ambazonians have played the middle ground for too long, and that middle ground has only been taken over by bad people. But when I say bad people, I mean people who are inhumane, the violators of both international law and conventions. Everywhere La République is being called for violations. In fact, that government, if Mr. Cohen wants to really talk about who should be supported in that place, the government of La République du Cameroon till today is not a democratic government. It was a government that came in through a genocide. They've lived through violence. If you read all the U.S. reports about Cameroon, it's a lawless country. So I don't know what would drive Mr. Herman Cohen to go and be an advocate of it. And I'm going to repeat this, that with all this history, it says a lot about CDN recruiting him. And I didn't hear CDN come out and say this man's viewpoints are not our viewpoints. I haven't seen a statement being put out like that. But
are you sure that it's not Cohen who recruited CDN instead of the other way around?
I can only say what I can see. But let me say that
I'm telling you because I was seriously lobbied to be part of that project, and I saw through it, and I told them no.
Well, I thank you for saying no, because it's not a force that is for Ambazonian, nor is it helping it. The other part that I wanted to talk about, though, was more pragmatic and more practical. See, you've picked on the United States, you've picked on the French, you've picked on the British. It looks like these are people we need their support to win Ambazonia back. It looks like you're driving them into the hands of the corporate interests and La République against Ambazonia. How do you think that works for us? How is speaking the truth? How is speaking? Let me just finish. How is speaking the truth the way you see it and speak it help us?
Well,
because we need to be looking for friends and bringing them, because it's a fight. Really, I don't think the world even works on matters of right and wrong or morality. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's purely a power play.
I'm sorry. Unfortunately, not all of us are Christians, but I'm a Christian. And one of the things I remember is that the truth shall save thee. Right? And in this United States, they claim in their constitution, this is a nation established under God. Right?
Yes.
There are still good people in the United States, even in their government. So when I make this statement, I am telling you that the United States, if they think we are not aware of the anti-African and, in our instance, Ambazonian political, economic, foreign policy of the United States, we are aware of it. They need to know we are not ignorant, we are not unskillful, and we want that they should throw away the impression that we are ignorant, stupid, and they can ride us. Remember, I mentioned that we are ready to partner with people who recognize and respect us. The number of Ambazonians in this United States, we can create an impact. If you ask the Ambazonians how many people vote, we have not sufficiently educated ourselves to vote in this place. And politicians take every vote into account. If we organize, as I had proposed in 2007, the Ambazonian movement in the United States, and make sure that we don't go and hire a lobby. We lobby from grassroots upwards by giving our votes, our support during campaign, and so on to the American politicians. That's how we will vehicle our agenda into policy discourse. I do not subscribe to that idea of weakness of Africans. I tell you, precious minerals are being harvested for the longest time, have been harvested for the longest time from Legnos area. Nobody gives an account of it. They bribe the security in Yaoundé. If you stop an 18-foot container carrying, trailer, carrying those minerals out of Womb, you can get a phone call transferring you to Betua, and you are replaced by phone call. So they are thriving on corruption. And since the struggle took a new amplitude, are those minerals still going out?
I guess not.
Good. So the British people, a handful of people, they rule the world with their mind. Who told you that the Ambazonian mines cannot positively infect the entire Gulf of Guinea and even Africa and make things happen for us? You must not make the error. Jacques Chirac is the one who came and spoke to the French electorate confessionally that without the African countries, France will not exist economically. That was a confession. He had been president. So why must we wait for them to call the shots all the time? Remember what Barrister Benmuna said. He said, "Let them fight, man. Let them fight. I'm 70 plus. My parents are not going to come and fight. I'm not going to fight. Let them fight for their future. They can suspend school for some time." Right?
He did.
It's on YouTube.
Yes, he did.
I follow in the footsteps of the venerable Benmuna and say that anybody with Ambazonian blood who thinks that he should lick the ass of a foreigner to live a momentary good life and forget about his own nation is inviting upon himself a curse. In fact, the doors of heaven will be shut on him.
Barrister, thank you. I think every time we listen to you, we hear other voices that only come through you. So I really appreciate the response. The only thing I want to add there is, the world has been ruled by a lot of evil. That's how, and when I say a lot of evil, I mean by force. Most of the world has been ruled by force, and I think when I started this question that you just came from responding to, I talked about that the world is not ruled by morality, what is right, but by force. And so sometimes, given that environment, you want to recognize even the token islands of purity or of recognizing right and wrong. And I think we did a good job in separating Thibault Nash, the diplomat, and Thibault Nash, the individual. I want to also say that of all the powers that can change what is happening in Ambazonia, that can change the genocide happening in Ambazonia, one of the powers, and I think they're still struggling with it, and I think that at some point, either the citizens of the United States or the government of the United States will step in. The citizens of the United States stepped in apartheid, and they forced the hand of the government, and apartheid was ended in South Africa. What is going on right now in Ambazonia, I don't think Ambazonians have communicated what is happening in Ambazonia effectively enough to the American people, because if they see the images and understand what is going on, I tell you something will happen. But I want to emphasize more on what the government of America has done compared to, obviously, the government of France, who is the one blowing the fire and engineering what is happening in La République du Cameroon. The British really haven't said very much, but here's what the Americans have said, and I want to recognize that. I think the American ambassadors Peter Balorain spoke very clearly about what was going on in Ambazonia and pointed out some of those evils.
The government has committed summary executions. They are guilty of detaining people and not allowing them access to lawyers, to their families, even to visits from the Red Cross. They have been guilty of burning villages and looting and of general harassment of the population.
We already talked about Thibault Nash. I also want to recognize that it's a conscious effort for Trump to have not invited Paul Biya to the White House when he wanted to talk to African leaders. I think Biden just repeated the same thing. So let's, in the midst of the darkness that you just painted, and the encouragement you give Ambazonians to stand up for their rights, because I think Ambazonians in the last 4 years have discovered that they actually do have powers to stop things, like what you just revealed that is happening in Womb, around the Lenyons area. They stopped it. I can tell you they stopped a lot. They burnt a lot of trucks that were carrying timber. So the exploit of natural material and natural resources in Ambazonia has slowed down, if not stopped. I think if Ambazonians knew how to stop the offshore drilling, that too will be stopped. But I just want us that as we go along, let's recognize even the little steps that some of the powers are making, and maybe encourage them to come forward.
No, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I beg to cut in. Don't get me wrong. Look, the United States is a hodgepodge of people from almost all over the world. And their survival depends on effective communication across groups. When I make these statements, I am not giving a definitive condemnation of the United States. So far, they are the best. Because Britain remains cunning, France is vicious, Canada is sly, Germany is sly. And why do I say this? The freedom of speech, freedom of association, the way it is practiced in the United States, gives us the opportunity to be able to discuss as we are discussing now. It is also a school for us to be able to take home and implement them. But we are disorganized. And when we are not organized, the few evil-minded Americans will have the comfort of not communicating with us, not being taken to account for their role in the Ambazonian struggle. But the moment we organize ourselves, in fact, if Ambazonians in every senatorial district in this United States took this matter seriously, and we went to every senator, we went to every member of the House of Representatives, both at the national level and at the state level, which is what you and I and a few people discussed in Minnesota as early as March 2007, when I predicted that come 5 years, we shall be on the negotiation table. We have not done our homework.
All right.
We need to do that homework. And people are now, let's finish this part, because there's a part that we're going to talk about, mending the plane that is faulty in order to fly and land safely.
I agree with you that we wait. I just want to tie this international part because most of the things that you have talked about, I know you mentioned Christianity, but I think most of the things that you talked about, I think you really talked about the lie of democracy and some of the principles that the West goes around preaching as virtues. Because if there's any territory in that whole Gulf region that has practiced the virtues, done their homework, obeyed every international, it has been Ambazonia, but it's been the most punished. So I think that's what you're talking about, and I do recognize that, and I think that is really the lie of democracy, and that's why I took time to point out that the regime that the international community, including all these powers, are supporting is a regime that came to power through a genocide, through force. It does not practice democracy. There's no rule of law, and that's why I said if it was not a country that engulf Western interests, it would have been called out a long time ago. You can already see they're calling out Masias Nguema in Equatorial Guinea. I mean, they called him out in a 60-minute piece in Australia, all over the world. In France, they're seizing his son's properties. They're not seizing any properties from Paul Biya. Paul Biya has been in power, getting to be.
The oil well in Equatorial Guinea are drying up.
So I do understand that, and I really do appreciate you. And if you notice, I just let you put it all out. I just let you put it all out because yes, it is something that when you think about it rationally, you get confused about the messages we get from the West, the messages we get from our churches, the messages that we get from every responsible institution. This is how you have to behave to be a successful human being, to be a successful country. And then when Ambazonia, that was the first democracy in that Gulf of Guinea, or in that whole area there, becomes the country that is victimized the most, the country that was doing better. They saw that La République du Cameroon is a colonial French empire in a war. They still made it a choice for people who are seeking for independence to go into the worst colonization that they've ever known. So it is time. I'm glad you brought it out. I'm sure that's not all, but let me ask you. I think you were already going where I'm trying to go now. Tell me what you think about what Ambazonians have done in the past 4 years. I know you just told them to take charge of their freedom. Tell me, before we say what they should do, tell me what you think has happened in this past 4 years to bring us where we are now.
Yeah, we have been talking too much. There has been an unimaginable sound pollution amongst Ambazonians. And even our non-Ambazonian listeners, I think they are tired. And the reason is this. We have been operating without a strategy. If you take, for example, just that word, Ambazonia, let me ask you, as a consistent recorder of interviews and stuff like that, how many people in various generations that you have been able to articulate and show understanding of the concept of Ambazonia? I'm not yet talking about proceeding from there to developing a theory of Ambazonia after it was launched by Chief Kojidinka. By my estimation, the foot soldier in his village has understood a little bit of what Ambazonia is. Not necessarily from, the certificated. I'm reluctant to call the educated. So even the people who are managing the process, who somersaulted into the seat of power at various levels, and suddenly felt a divine downloading of all that it takes to translate the slogan, Arriving Boya, into reality. They don't even understand the game with which they're involved. They don't. Ask them what is Ambazonia. They will tell you that it's Northwest and Southwest. And then they will immediately ignite a conflict. That's so stupid. We need to be able to, you cannot get into a car and start driving it without knowing what is the capacity of the tank. And if I want to make a journey of 300 miles, how much fuel do I need to put? You need to start with the basics of understanding the project from the theoretical standpoint.
So you're saying that Ambazonians are not properly organized?
There is a serious lack of essential education.
Okay, so that's one. And then you said
before they met with all those conclaves in Nigeria, more than 10 years before then, 15 years even, various groups, Ambazonian groups, had drawn up and continually were refining a constitutional foundation for Ambazonia.
Mm-hmm.
If you know the way China was built under Mao Zedong, we used to receive little pamphlets about China. Very plain, simple language. They were educating the Chinese and educating the outsiders to understand what China is, who Chinese are, what they are about. Today we have the results, right?
Yes.
Do we have, you watch what is going on, do we have any such education?
No, we don't. But let me just add something about that. You know, in one of our pieces, in fact, in the piece that we did, examining what CDN is, I took time to say that we lack institutional memory, and that's why we keep either ignoring things like you just said. I mean, when you said what you said, I was thinking he is talking about people who have spent decades and resources putting the concept of Ambazonian and what should be done. These people just came and ignored all of that. That's because there's no institutional memory. There's no organization. I think that's what I'm gathering.
This is what I tried to build for lawyers. On the 9th of May 2015, by the time we were launching, I presented the keynote, I did the keynote presentation. It had been in my computer for more than a year. So I didn't just get up one morning like that and say, oh, let's run. And no. No food improperly cooked would taste well. I had a sketch strategic plan. What we'll do in the first 2 years, the next 3 years, and the next 5 years. That brought us to a 10-year plan. And in that first 2-year plan, we had litigation before the Constitutional Council of the Republic of Cameroon to determine, to prove that we have exhausted local remedies. That matter is still pending. Justice Atangana, who was president of that court, he is in ICU in France, in Paris. The matter is still pending. They shove it under the carpet. Because I asked a fundamental question. Some of my colleagues for good cause said, we cannot fly with this. Okay, but I knew what I was doing. I've been involved since 1970. So I put it in under my hand. Because I emphasize non-violence, and as a lawyer, I have faith in treading the judicial track. I knew, and I've had interviews and I said it. If we go to their court because they are in control of our territory and they do not respond well, I'll take it to the international community. Tell me right now, what judgment can you take in your hand like this and show anybody that this is exhaustion of local remedies?
No, there's none. There's none.
There is something that has been floating around about the Bamenda High Court judgment. That's all fake. I practiced in Bamenda. That was my base. And when they started making that noise, I went to court because all these Ambazonians who have been working in Ambazonia, they are very faithful to the cause. And I collected information from that file. No matter was heard and no decision was taken. I've told even the gentleman who propagates it that he should zip it because it could end up being embarrassing.
No, but let me say something about that. You know, La République is a country that destroys documents, it kills people, it eliminates it. Look, when thieves steal, they don't want to leave any tracks. And so one of the things that Gojitinka always said, and I is that France, in all its colonial violence, knows that still it's a country that respects court decisions. And so if anything about Ambazonia that counts by law, obviously will be destroyed. And I don't know. And he shows documents that Le Messager published it. So I want to leave room that you didn't find anything, but maybe La République destroyed them, and maybe they.
Excuse me, I know what I'm talking about. Okay. When you file an action, an originating summons, there is a plaintiff and there is the person to respond. You serve that person. If you serve that person and the person does not come, the next step is to file a motion for judgment in default. And the court has the powers under the law. And at that time, they were still applying the Southern Cameroon High Court's law. Even part of it is still being applied up to now. That is a procedure we know. They should have followed through with that procedure. But, you know, we didn't do that due diligence. And I have a heavy heart discussing it. Let's just let sleeping dogs lie. But get it from me. There's no such judgment. Your submission that you write in a matter does not become a judgment by forfeiture. Like when you have a football match and the other team doesn't come. No, the rules are different. This one is the area of law. I'm not going to debate it with either a dishonest lawyer or somebody not knowledgeable in law.
And I'm not a lawyer, so I would fall under.
No, it's not about you. I know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
No, and as I'm talking like this, when the people listen to this interview, they will know that I've addressed the issue privately for over 6 years, and they don't want to listen. Now it has popped out in public, and they just need to be quiet.
All right. So, Barrister. Yes. So, what do you think we've done right in these past 4 years to still keep us in business, because we are still very much in business?
What we have done right is that we struck the iron while it was hot. And that initial education was so well taken in the minds of the oppressed people that it doesn't matter what we are doing out here. Ground Zero is leading this revolution now. And we only need to get a few good men to give a new direction to Ground Zero, to consolidate their position of leadership. And what do I mean by this? All these fraudsters, some of them call themselves generals from offshore. Excuse me. These people need to start thinking about positioning themselves to have the hard talk of negotiation, because it is coming. It is coming. And we have people out here who are ready to do training online, or we send the notes to them. Mark you, most of those fighters are graduates. They are graduates. They can read and write and understand even better. So when you ask me what have we gained, we have succeeded in effecting mass mobilization and sensitization of all and sundry in ground zero and even in the international community. And that mobilization has produced energy that can propel us to any height. It is only a few rotten cocoyams that have created holes in our ship that we are losing energy, or we are experiencing threats of loss of energy. But I'm saying it is not going to happen. And let nobody make the error that Bobga is saying this because he is interested in leadership. I have brought forth children. I've trained so many. At 62, marching on to 63, I don't want to go and compete with the children that I have mentored who have PhD and are capable of doing what I should have done 30 years back. I want to sit by the fireside, drink my palm wine, eat my plantain and granite, fried granite, and counsel them. Not counsel them the Cohen way, counsel them the Nagy way. Not Nagy, please, Nash.
So that now eases us into, in a very summarily way, please tell us what we need to do beginning this new year. We're talking new year now.
I can't say this without telling you that the vibes that I am receiving indicates that the majority of Ambazonians the world over are disenchanted and frustrated with the shame of this idea of government and how it has produced a socio-political cancer in our society. I think it is time. Anybody who wants to run a car for more than 5-10 years, the first thing they do is to make sure that they do their oil check regularly so that the engine doesn't get knocked. We have been running the governments or whatever like an engine where there's no oil and want to put salt water inside and continue to run. Lies, thievery, that has to stop. And let nobody be frightened. I saw a clip where, did I say it was a Restoration Council swearing in the gentleman who says he's the president of Ambazonia? I was lobbied when Siseko was picked up to take over the reins of power. And I said that has never been my agenda. I objected firmly. And I have people who can testify. Even when we're leading the lawyers, I ensured that it was corporate. Even though I was the most senior among the president of lawyers, I never played the ticket of seniority to stand up as the ultimate leader of lawyers. We were using the cooperative and communitarian approach so that we could find the unity that produced the strength, and it made a difference. Everybody can see it. This is where we need to go back to. We precipitated the formation of a government. Okay. When something happens, you deal with it. If you deliver an autistic child, do you throw the child away?
No, you don't.
Maybe our government was autistic, but we need to take care. We went to APNC and there were all sorts of blackmail, but a few good men came out with resolutions. People have called me because I read those resolutions. They have called me, well, what can we do, this and that. And an old man called me from Europe and was weeping as if they had burned his house with his wife and children inside. I said, what's the matter? He said, Master, you have just left the revolution like this. I said, is that what you're talking about? Did my mother or my father, who are now in their graves, tell you that they delivered Bobga to come and lead the revolution? I contribute. I'm not bound to be at the head. Yes. Because until there is a foundation of democracy, which cannot be established, until we have gone back to base. Like you often say, you don't want to be shown your leader. You want your leader to emerge through his works, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
So, those are the missteps we have had. In fact, the, so to speak, Ambazonian government has been the most undemocratic, self-eating structure that this revolution has experienced from the running up to the plebiscite till now. I just want them, and this was my query with the Restoration Charter. I've never refused to do draft work. I've never restrained myself from asking people who know better than me that come and let us work together and draft something for Ambazonia. I always do it. But whoever are the persons who drafted the verbose Restoration Charter, before they did it, I had voiced it that the declaration did not need to be more than half a page. That Southern Cameroon, as it was on the 30th of September 1961, is hereby restored with all its institutions. And because time has lapsed and things have changed, there is going to be a progressive refinement and adaptation for that government, a parliamentary government, to take cognizance of the changes and march us forward. But what do we have? A replication of the BIA presidential system. They might be innocent, but when you see a man increasing his power every morning that he gets up from bed, why would you not say that he's a recruit of La Republique? Like you used to say about LeBron. You want your young players to imitate LeBron, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Also, the LeBron of the so-called Ambazonian government is Paul Biya. Sit tight, cover corruption. That has to stop. And we did the diagnosis and provided the treatment in APNC. The resolutions are there online. People should exploit it and read it. I did not say that we should be disruptive. I told the people, the organizers, because I was not an organizer. I left Buffalo and came there, and I said, print this thing in a booklet and distribute it to the widest community of Ambazonia. Let them read and understand, and then endorse it.
What I want you to do, though, what I want you to do more is be prescriptive about I want you to be prescriptive in terms of.
I don't want to come across as arrogant and start prescribing. Ambazonians, you can preserve your idea of government, but the way SCNC was organized, state by state, city by city, and the leaders at that time, they are alive. There is Dr. Mondwa, there is JJ Asungu, there's Larry Yongecho, we can give them a moral standard to go by. The moment we do not set ourselves up in a way that leadership is cultivated from bottom up in a pyramidal form so that it is stable and accountable with effective communication up and down and horizontally, we will not succeed.
Okay.
This has to be done all over the world, but particularly in the United States and on ground zero. We must bring the leadership of the fighting volunteers to a common understanding instead of fomenting conflict between them and getting them kill themselves while we sit here and say that we are their handlers. That is evil.
Okay. So, Barrister, here's what I'm thinking. I want you to give me a feedback on that, because I think that the fact that we were a constituted country running with our institutions almost independent, except internationally Britain had that power. I think the fact that we said we went and restored our independence made us think that by restoring means that we go. No, I think by restoring means that we have had our country back, and therefore we need to create governing institutions. I think that's a terrible concept that I can see why people naturally thought that way, but I think Ambazonians need to be in a fighting mode because their country has been occupied, and they need to fight as people who are decolonizing themselves. And when you start decolonizing yourself, and like you always said, I remember one thing you always said, that people are already now cutting the elephant just by seeing a shadow, and it may not even be the shadow of an elephant. So what I'm thinking is that we need to change our whole mentality about where we are. We were declared independence. That independence, that sovereignty was never passed on to us. I had Dr. Carson Anyangwe do me a piece on the thing I'm working on. What does sovereignty? And I think you answered that question too. We talked about sovereignty, but we have never had that sovereignty. So we need to be in a fighting mode. We don't need to be in a governing mode or in a political mode. And that's why I brought the concept of LeBron James. If you are in a fighting mode and you see somebody who is a good fighter, that's who you push in front. So we need to do that. I like the concept that you talked about reorganizing. Yes, I think we need to just get away from the government. I think America needs to be America, organize itself, and then work with other entities. I think the mistake we made the first time was that we had people sit in Nigeria and went on the internet and look at people they've seen on the internet and say, you are my Secretary of Communication, you are my this and that all over the world. And when they got picked up, then these idiots, most of them, they were always on the internet because they didn't have jobs. Now they took over the government and it became a thing about them. And no longer. And so, let me just finish this, please. And so I think that the United States is a country that every other country in the world has helped itself through its diaspora, through its American diaspora. Our diaspora has been controlled by people outside the United States. That needs to change. The United States needs to organize itself, bring all its intellectual, its resourceful base to assist its citizens on ground zero. I think you are absolutely correct that America needs to organize itself and ground zero needs to organize itself. When we start aligning like that, then we'll start moving in the right direction. Then we better organize. But all this government stuff, it's all bull, and it's all illusionary, and it's allowing lazy people to come in, and the smart ones. It's always said that bad money drives good money. We've had a lot of bad money in our politics, in our liberation struggle, and it's driven away the good money.
Well, let me add this to you. I'm still on the point that the United States, the Ambazonians in the United States, they should organize themselves with humility, because humility is a great virtue. There are Ambazonians in Canada. The Ambazonians these days, unlike it was before, in Asia, there are Ambazonians in Europe. Time does not permit us. You talked about how Americans changed the game for South Africa. I've been to South Africa severally, and I talked to people who were involved. They even set up an organization to manage their post-conflict reconstruction, NIPILA, National Institute for Public whatever. They had a whole bunch of European parliamentarians who christened themselves European parliamentarians for South Africa. They did it because ANC was organized, and they could take ANC leadership, discuss with them, ask them what needs to be done and how it can be done, and then advise them. So long as we do not organize ourselves to the extent where we can go and make prayers that our brothers in prison should die, nobody will take us seriously. So the idea of government is not entirely bad, but I'm saying the democracy that no other country in sub-Saharan Africa has practiced the way Ambazonia practiced it during the internal self-governing period is such that governance is highly sensitive to what the population wants and what the population does not want. That is why Endeli can be defeated and he will leave the state car and Foncha will take it in an election. Tell me where in the world it will happen. In fact, recently we experienced in the United States where somebody was refusing to give up office, right? But because the institutions have been built strong, the institutional culture prevailed. This is why I am saying that we need to build this institution from the grassroots upwards. You remember I gave you a paper, New Direction for the Struggle. I didn't go and copy templates from UN websites. I tapped from my experience as a little school boy challenging the teaching of French in Presbyterian Boys School, Kumba Town, till date. And I didn't do it to market myself. I shared it so that he who wants to be leader should know that this is the mantra. And above all, we should stop this business of talking to ourselves 90%. We should flip it. We should start talking to these foreigners. We should market ourselves.
Let me say this, and I think we begin to round it up. I think you only start marketing yourself if you organize properly. And organizing properly is not organizing because governance means organizing is governing a settled environment with settled people. But when you don't have a governing environment and you don't have settled people, you cannot govern. You fight to establish that environment. And that's why I'm saying this is not the time for governments and all that. I know that when Ambazonians, let me just finish this. When Ambazonians, I'll give you the last word. When Ambazonians can fight this fight, secure their country, then they can go back and all what was there will come in, and then the modification. In fact, I think the idea of I really like something that you said. which was what was happening before 1961 when we were taken over. Because at that point, the British had actually drawn a constitution for Southern Cameroon called Orders in Council, which we can then go and take and let it be a play. But I want to emphasize that it is the Amber Boys who have saved us, and they saved us by fighting, not by governing anything. They govern the gun, and they govern their weapons and their strategies, and they are continuing to fight. Let us be in a fighting mode, and any other person who wants to come and help should be those who support that fighting mode. And then those people who are not fighting then go out and develop these relationships you're talking about with other countries and other organizations that can come and help us. But they will help us when we can tell our story very clear to them, give them the understanding that you said is lacking, educate our people on the ground. I think you already admitted that we did a wonderful job at that when the whole thing started. I think the only thing that we really need to do now is also organize ourselves abroad, and then not as a government, because I've brought other speakers who have said when immediately you call yourself government, no other government wants to talk to you because it means recognizing you, and they don't want to do that, even though they sympathize with you and want to help you. So let's reorganize ourselves in liberation organizations. There are many liberation organizations in the world today who talk to everybody. Once we do that, and if we do that in our localities rather than people sitting somewhere and appointing people in other communities that they don't know the people, I don't want us to repeat that, because we've already seen that work and failed. So government has failed us. People staying in their out of other environments and try to appoint people in other it's failed us already. So we shouldn't be repeating that. So in 2022, we really need to go back and examine what has happened in the last 5 years, fix those, keep those that were working, and just be. If we do that, because a lot of the people that are controlling us are no more educated than we are, and I think you're a very good example of how good our people are.
Have you had the chance to read the APNC resolution?
I have not read it, but I do have.
Okay, you maybe you had snippets, but one of the things that were said there was that the government was suspended, and in its place, a Revolutionary Restoration Council should be established, which is more in the nature of the liberation thing that you mentioned. Because for a governance, properly speaking, to exist, they need territory that they control. In fact, if we had only one county that we're controlling, we can claim government. But we are not yet there, because there is a lot of manipulation. It's not that we don't have the capacity. And before we run out of time, let me make this point. Fighting. If you study American politics very well, fighting is not only in pulling the trigger. Fighting is using the mind itself, is using the economy. Can you imagine the impact of the American foreign policy as developed and nurtured by Kissinger, the way it has benefited this country?
Yeah, but America is a settled state, so I think we're talking about this.
What I'm saying is that it's a settled state, but it is not settled in international politics. They are always push and pull. Are we not struggling with China now? What did Putin? You are talking. Putin is making his own statements there. Putin is making incursions. They are now in control of Mali. They are in control of Central African Republic. There are countervailing forces out there. But what I am saying is that Ambazonia should use their intellect, which they have, rather than throw themselves out there to be used. And since we have the majority of people here, there is somebody from Northern Zone who is running for governorship in Pennsylvania. If I had my way, I mobilize Ambazonians around those states to go to Pennsylvania and help that gentleman to campaign door to door so that when he is seated there as governor, he has an entry point to discuss and inject into the policy in this country through his senators, through his members of House of Reps, the concerns of his homeland.
Okay. Now, so how do conclude the end of 2021 and wish in 2022 for us, Barrister?
Yeah, 2021 was a difficult year. For almost every Ambazonian, from personal to national level. We lost loved ones. We lost the fighting forces. We lost innocent civilians. I'm reluctant to say that's the price, but indeed, it is the price, not for winning, but the price for us to be steadfast. 2022, therefore, demands that we transform all the negativities of 2021 in a crucible of synergy and produce the flying saucers with which we shall cross the Jordan and land softly in what belongs to us.
I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you motivating this. I think it was a wonderful discussion. I think it was enlightening, and I think it showed the spirit of Ambazonia. The only thing I wanted to say, and I'm not going to say it on camera, is that you are the ultimate leader in everything you say and do, except that you are the leader. And I was going to be telling those people who say you should be the leader to back off, but I can tell you that they are absolutely right. And I don't care how far you run and everything. They will have to pick their leader, and sometimes it's not the leader who picks himself. So there you go.
You again.